All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Mrs. Rondo. We're going to be talking about identifying and naming basic geometric figures. So we have kind of already talked about the things you're going to see in this lesson. This is just kind of a review to make sure that we are all sure how to do this as we move into our next lessons, which are going to be about triangle congruence. So our essential question, how do we identify and name basic geometric figures? The learning goals here, these are not grade level learning goals. These are really building towards our current learning goals having to do with triangles. But this is what we are trying to achieve with this lesson. I can identify and name angles in a variety of ways. I can identify and name line segments and lines in a variety of ways. And I can identify and name rays. All right, so here we go. We're going to start off with lines. By the way, this format is not, if you didn't already notice, there's not a Google Doc that goes with this. I just want you to take notes on your own paper here. It's pretty straightforward and you guys should be able to do it. So we have lines, and we're going to talk about, for all of the figures we talk about, we're going to do the figure and how to name it. So a line, in case you didn't know, looks something like this. It is a straight path that has no thickness, and we represent it with something like that, hopefully super straight path, no thickness, but it continues forever in both directions, which is why we tag those arrows on the ends. That tells us that it continues in that direction. So the path continues in both directions forever and ever. All right, so how we name this, there's multiple ways. I can do it with a single letter. When it is a single letter, it is a lowercase letter, like a very common one you'll see is M. So I could say, hey, this is line M. Notice it is no point associated with it. It's just a letter, and typically it's near the arrow. It just means that's line M. Another way is I can tag some points on here, some points on the line, and I can call it, I can say A and B. So I could also call it, with the word line, I could say line AB. But typically when we do points, we write it this way. So we might say AB, and we use the notation with the little line above it. Notice the arrows on both ends. That means line. For a line, it doesn't matter what order those letters go in. So you can start at A and go to B, or you can start at B and go to A. So with the information there are three different ways. I'm going to scooch that down just a little bit. Three different ways that we could represent the figure there. Line M, line AB, or we can call it line BA. And notice every time I said line. So that would be, this one right here would be pronounced, I'm literally saying line AB. That's what you say. Okay, so hopefully that helps a little bit with that one. Let's go ahead and move on to line segment. So just make another little section here, line segment. Again, we've seen this before. The figure for a line segment is basically just looks like the one we did a minute ago. It's a straight path because it is a section of a line. Basically, we take a line and we go from an end point to an end point. So like in that previous example where we had the points, if we just went from point A to point B, that would be a line segment. So it's a piece of a line. It has two end points because it stops. It does not continue in both directions because it's only a piece of a line. So again, I can call this like we did before. This is A and B. So how we name that, we call that segment or line segment AB, and on top we have just a bar across because it doesn't continue in both directions. So with a line, we have arrows, like we saw a minute ago. We have those arrows at the top showing us that it continues in both directions. For a, I'm going to get rid of this as well. All right, for a line segment, it does not continue in both directions, so it stops. So we show just a not, no arrows. And with a line segment as well, you can go in reverse order. It doesn't matter. So you could call it segment BA, and it is the same. Okay, next one, we have array. All right, so for array can look a couple of different things, and I'm going to draw this one actually a little bit in a funny way for us. I'm going to draw it this way. Whoops. Well, I'm going to try to draw that a little better. Okay, there we go. Ish. Okay, so array is also a piece of a line, but this type of figure actually does continue forever in one direction. The other direction has an endpoint. So array has an endpoint like a line segment, and it has an arrow like a line. It is a piece or a section of a line. And it does have this arrow, which means it goes forever in one particular direction. So in this case, mine goes forever in this direction. To name array, we're going to need 2 points. So I'm going to tag another point on here. And I'm going to call this, I'm just going to label my points C and D. Now, to name it, this is super important. The way that we name arrays, we always start, I'm going to even write this down, start with the end point. Always. We always start with the end point. Then go towards the arrow. Okay, so we're always going to follow the direction of the ray. So we start at the end point and go towards the arrow. So if I'm starting at the end point, I have to start with D. Then as I go towards the arrow, that's when I go to point C. So I have D, C. And then we always, because we're starting at the end point, array always in the notation points this way because it shows this is the end point is D and the arrow is at C. So even though the actual direction of the ray in my picture goes the other way, that's how we name it. Okay, so it's always, the first letter always tells you the end point. The second letter always tells you the direction of the arrow. Okay, so this one I might actually draw another one to make it a bit easier. We could call this, go F and G. And so again, if I start with the endpoint, I have to start with F, and then I go towards the arrow with G, and I draw my ray. So both of these would be pronounced ray, DC, and ray, FG. Okay? Great. Last one is going to be our angle. This one is a little bit more involved than the other two because it's kind of has combined features. So we're going to talk about all of those lovely features when we draw the figure here. So I'm going to draw an angle. So an angle, first of all, is composed of 2 rays that meet at the same endpoint. So here's my endpoint. I'm going to draw a ray this way, and I'm going to draw a ray out this way. So an angle is 2 rays. So I'm going to actually add in some points so I can name these rays. So I have this one right here is the side of the angle, and it is called, let me see, I need some letters. Let's go X, Y, and Z. So this side of the angle, which actually I'm going to highlight for us. Highlight, this is the side of the angle. It is a ray, and we would call it ray Y, X, because the endpoint is at Y and it goes to X. And then we have another side as well. This one down here is also called a side of the angle, and I'm going to highlight that for us. So we have a second side to our angle. And this one is called, it's also a ray. So the sides of the angle are considered rays. This one would be called ray Y, Z, because the endpoint is at Y and it goes towards Z. So that side would be side YZ. Write that a little, whoopsie. Write that a little bit neater here. Okay, and re-highlight because I accidentally erased my highlighting. Okay, so those are the sides of the angles. When we see these in our triangles, we won't see the rays so much because they are still rays, but because they're within the context of a triangle, we see them, the sides of our angle being the sides of the triangle. And they have endpoints because it's an enclosed figure. All right, so then the angle itself is the measurement between the sides. So if I measure from one side to the other, that curve in there, that distance, that is actually the angle. Okay, that's actually the angle. And then one other thing we need to point out here, and that is the end point, that was the end point for both rays. When we're talking about angles, this point has a special name. We call it the vertex of the angle. So we have the vertex of the angle, which is the point where the rays meet. All right, so those are all the parts there for the angle. So how do we write it? There are multiple ways to write write or name an angle. So the first way I'm going to say is with the vertex. With a single letter, we can say this is angle Y. When we use a single letter, it must be the vertex. And I ran out of room there. Okay, so if we use a single letter, it must be the vertex. Now, you can only use a single letter if it is 100% clear which angle it is. So sometimes you won't be able to use a single letter because there's more than one angle at that point. So the single letter again must be the vertex. All right, so that's one way. The other main way that we name angles is with 3 letters. So the 3-letter system is going to start at a side and end at a side. And the key is that the vertex is the middle letter. That's the key. The vertex is always going to be the middle letter. So it doesn't matter which side we start on. So I could start with the side where I have the X, then I go to the vertex, which is Y, and then to the other side, which is Z. So I'm going to do this in a different color. I'm going to go to my highlighter for a second, and I'm going to erase it. I'm just going to do it so we can see that path that I took. So I went from X to Y to Z. So hopefully you can see how that traces the angle. Okay. And so I'm going to erase that. That was just so we can see that. And then you could do it in reverse. So you could start at Z and then go to Y and not to Z again, to X. There we go. And so that would also give you that same angle. And again, I'm going to prove it to you. Let's go to our highlighter here and I'm going to trace it. So from Z to Y to X. So those are all ways that we can name the angle. Okay, there is one other one that pops up sometimes. So really quickly, let me show you that one. Sometimes you guys have seen this already. We have a number. So like if I had the number 3 in here, I could say, oh, this is angle 3. So that's another way that we could name it. If it has a number assigned to it, we use that as well. So really quick, some no-nos. What is a way that we cannot name the angle? So this is a no-no. We're not allowed to name angles in this way. So I'm going to do a 3-letter setup that is incorrect. So if I tried to call this angle YXZ, this is a no-no because if I try to trace that, I go Y to X, and then there's no connection to Z. I'm no longer tracing the angle right here that I was trying to measure. So Y to X to Z doesn't make sense. It's not, it doesn't work. So just wanted to make sure we kind of saw that, how that's a very common mistake there. So you have to make sure that that vertex is the middle letter. And that is it. You guys have a great rest of your day. Make sure to check out the homework on Google Classroom, and we will see you later.